Perceived value and benchmarking.
Perceived value is often related to some sort of benchmark. For example, our own valuation of an asset is at least influenced by its market value. The perceived value deviates from the market, but it will at least be influenced by how the market values the asset. We suggest that there are other benchmarks that will play a role when setting the perceived value of a real option. For example, it is possible that an asset becomes more valuable to us just because our competition really wants it and therefore signals that their perceived value of the asset is high. The signal could, for example, be an increased purchase price bid by that competitor. Surely, the book value of an asset doesn't increase just because a competitor wants it, but the market value is influenced. And is the market value not just a culmination of perceived values? If we extend this concept of demand and supply, where more and more entities' perceived values might influence the market price of an asset, which would create a bubble, as we have seen numerous times between the tulip craze and the latest housing bubble, then the extension of this concept should also apply to option valuation. The perceived values of options are influenced by valuations held by other market participants. If competition's value perceptions increase, so might our perceived value of that same option. This increase in valuation would then not solely be based on rational behavior but also on the intricacies of the relationship between the competitor and us. For example, if Google and Microsoft would try to secure an option for the same asset, then their rival relationship might influence their own internal, perceived, valuation of that option. The realization that our own perceived value of an option is not just endogenous to the firm, but is also influenced by outside forces, such as the competitor, now opens this up for some gamesmanship. At one point, a firm might not even really want to purchase the real option, but continues to signal that it does just to increase the perceived value to the competitors and hence drive up the price. As such, the concept of perceived value is closely related to firm strategy. If we know that our competitors' perceived value of an option increases upon our demonstration of interest, then this could result in a bidding war, and escalation of commitment. For example, one might observe this bidding war with financial options when it comes to finding a new CEO for a firm, where usually the salary of these CEOs is relatively low, but the amount of options might decide where the CEO decides to go. Thus, the firm with the highest option value becomes the winner in the competition for the CEO. One could imagine that the same concept can apply to real options. Two firms compete for the same resource and try to outbid each other, where the resource is an option on a real asset. One might find similar examples in professional sports, where not only salaries but also options are part of a player's or coach's compensation package. The much sought-after no-trade clause, for example, is an option for the player, the option to decline a trade, while teams often have the option to pick up a player's contract. In addition, the external force influencing the perceived value of an option may come from a regulatory entity. If, for example, the government sets new environmental standards pertaining to the extraction of oil, then a patent on a new technique to extract that oil might suddenly be perceived as more highly valued. All of this may suggest that the perceived value of a real option is influenced by exogenous forces. To what degree is the perceived value of a real option driven by internal or external forces? This is an interesting question, and might depend on the specific situation, but in general one could imagine that it may have something to do with the firm's experience dealing with real options. If, for example, a firm is relatively new to the concept of real options, then it might trust outside advice or guidance more than if it had ample experience dealing with and valuing real options. Also, the relative experience with real options, or lack thereof, might also impact the efficiency with which real options are created, recognized, and used. As such, Kogut and Zonder 43 found that if options are integrated, organizational routines and culture will adjust, raising the cost of abandoning the option. Bauer and Christiansen 44 found that when options are only used sporadically they will increase costs, pushing firms to kill them. In both cases it may be argued that a firm's experience with options may influence their perceived value of the said option.